Welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Bianca, and on this channel we make simple homemade recipes. Today I'm going to show you how to make homemade vegetable stock. I'm going to show you what you could do to freeze it and also how to pressure can it. And if you wanted to, you could always just place it in the fridge in mason jars. 2.5 bags of vegetables, carrots, onions, celery. And we put water in this big pot. I got this big pot from Goodwill. I always suggest keeping an eye out for any type of pot, pan, appliance at Goodwill because you could find some really good ones. Now, I let this go on the stove and it was at a rolling boil for probably 4 hours. And it reduced down so we have a nice rich vegetable stock. We are going to get out all the big particles and strain it through a cheesecloth so we will be able to can it up. The last time I did stock, it was chicken stock, and I did 1 round in the canner, but then I had some left over. I didn't want to rerun the canner, so what I did is I put them in these mason jars with the lids off, let them freeze, and then once they froze, I put the rings and the lids on. Whenever I want it, I could put it in the fridge. I would take the ring and the lid and crack it to make sure that it's not sealed so that air could come in and out to make sure that we don't damage the glass. This is a way that you could keep homemade stock in your freezer. We plugged in our canner. I bought this in kind of like the spring of 2023. And this is a way where it kind of takes you through the steps digitally on what you need to do to make sure that you're pressure canning properly. I'm sticking to this, but if I do get to the point where I'm doing a lot more pressure canning, I will invest in one for the stovetop because it could do a lot more cans. What you need if you're using this pressure canner is there's a guide, and you want to make sure you go by the manual. And then once you go through the manual once, it's actually very detailed. They have this little quick start guide where it kind of takes you through the cliff notes of that manual. So we are going to look at this and it's going to take us through step by step. Well, I have this canning cookbook and it has all the different types of canning recipes. Based on our canning cookbook, it says for quarts we want to pressure can for 35 minutes. We are going to go by the pressure canning process. We could see right here, you may not be able to see it, but it says pressure can, and when you flip the knob, it says boiling water can. Since we are doing stock, we need to pressure can. We'll click it's like a play button, and it's going to ask us for the processing time for the pressure canning itself. So we need 35 minutes. It tells you now to insert jars. So I need to put water in this. There's a line in the pot showing where to put the water to. So we're going to fill it up. And then we are going to fill up our jars halfway so that we could warm our jars. What we want to make sure, and I check at this point, run your finger along the rim of the jar to make sure there's no cracks or food particles or anything. Because we want to make sure that we will get a seal on these cans so we could put them on our shelves. If for whatever reason there's a crack, it may impact the sealing process and you may have an open jar when you're done pressure canning, which is not what you want to have. Place the lid on. We are going to click the play button again. It says warm. It's warming up the jars now. Now our canner says fill jar, so they are ready to be filled up. Out. We'll dump the water out in the sink. Put our funnel. Now I can't find my debubbler. Maybe I'll put a picture here on what I'm talking about. You want to make sure you fill it up just enough so it has enough headspace in which it's asking for. So per the canning cookbook, it says 1 inch of headspace. I know that's right under this bottom ring right here. Now what we want to do is dip a cloth and vinegar. Wipe it around the rim of the jar. You're gonna get a new lid, place it on there, and then you're going to get a ring. Just fingertip tight. You don't want to crank it and use your wrist. Just fingertip tight. And this is going to make sure that it's going to pressure can properly. So we could put this back. And when you use this, you want to make sure you're holding the actual jar, not the ring up here, the actual jar itself. Now we are going to close up our canner. I want to make sure the regulator is off, and then we will click the play button again, and it says heat. So it's going to heat to a certain temperature, and then it's going to start pressure canning. We just want to throw in some vinegar into the canner.
The canner will let us know when the cooling process is complete. We are going to slowly and carefully take the jars out of the canner. This is where you want to make sure your little tool to take them out, you're holding the jar and not the rings themselves. As you can see here, they're still bubbling. You want to leave them undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. After that time period, we are going to take the rings off and check to see if they sealed properly. Fortunately, all 4 of them sealed. We were able to label and date them and put them on our pantry shelf. Thanks for canning with me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. See you next time.